Let me give you an example of something that really bothers me. In this bill, if you're a farmer, your loan will be forgiven up to 120% of your loan, not 100%, but 120% of your loan if you're socially disadvantaged, if you're African American, some other minority. But if you're white person, if you're a white woman, no forgiveness as reparations. What has that got to do with COVID?
Maybe Homeboy should worry about that subpoena down in Georgia instead of what farmers get. But as you heard, in 2021, Senator Lindsey Graham had the temerity to object to a small portion of the COVID relief bill that would provide a $4 billion fund for disadvantaged farmers, about a quarter of whom happen to be black. Now, for clarity, the Department of Agriculture says 97% of the $9.2 billion from Trump's coronavirus food assistance program went to white farmers. That's according to a report by the EWG. So these payments would be just a drop in the bucket in what's needed to rectify decades of broken promises and discrimination from the USDA that caused black farmers to lose roughly 90% of their land between 1910 and today. Now, a little over a year later, and the debt relief program has stalled. Why? Because they're meeting resistance from banks and white farmers, leaving these farmers deeper in debt as they deal with soaring costs for supplies like fuel and fertilizer. I swear to God, it's exhausting. Joining me now, John Boyd Jr., founder of the National Black Farmers Association, and Dania Davy, I hope I didn't mess up your name, Director of Land Retention and Advocacy at the Federation of Southern Cooperatives and Land Assistance Fund. So happy to have both of you. John, I want to start with you, looking so handsome in your cowboy hat this morning. Tell us what you have lost so far and what you are at risk of losing as long as this relief fund is mired in this resistance from white farmers and the banks.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And as I said on your show earlier, when Senator Lindsey Graham made those comments, he should be ashamed of himself, because I've been lobbying him for years about the plight of the black farmers. We've lost millions of acres of land. We've lost our way of living, our livelihood. And the COVID relief spending bill that provided the $5 billion in debt relief, $1 billion for outreach and technical assistance, and the other $4 billion for debt relief, was a 30-year-old ask from myself and others. Even as I was promised debt relief and a settlement agreement, I still didn't get it after the Secretary of Agriculture told the local and county office to provide me with debt relief. I want to let the audience know it was white farmers who got basically all of the debt relief for the 30 years I was asking Congress and the courts to provide debt relief to black farmers. White farmers got debt relief in this country with ease, and black farmers like myself were denied the time and time again to get debt relief in this country. The stack has been stacked against us. We've been facing discrimination. As you noted, the banks who've been bailed out in this country were one of the very first to speak out against black farmers getting debt relief in this country. So the government has failed us, the banks have failed us, and it's almost like 40 acres and a mule when we were promised these things. And every time there's a pot of money that's supposed to go to black farmers or black people in this country, we're told we have to wait. Last July at the White House, I was promised a meeting by President Biden. That hasn't happened. Since that time, we provided $50 billion in aid to Ukraine and other regions of the country, but we can't find a way to get the debt relief to blacks and other farmers of color in a timely manner.
That is heartbreaking, Mr. Boyd, and you deserve so much better. Dania, I do want to bring you in here because listening to Mr. Boyd talk about what he's gone through, I think it's important for the country to understand what black sharecroppers did in this country, even before they were sharecroppers, the forced labor, the cotton that this country, the wealth from the cotton that this country benefited from, the sugar cane. Black folks did all that. That is how this country became a superpower. So today, for men like Mr. Boyd to be at risk of losing everything he's built has to be god-awful and infuriating. What needs to happen, Dania? How do we fix this? Because we can't depend on the government, but how can we apply pressure to the government to do what is right and do what is owed to these black farmers who help put food on their very table?
Thank you so much for having me, Tiffany. It's wonderful to be here. As you may know, the Federation of Southern Cooperatives Land Assistance Fund has been assisting black farmers, landowners, and cooperatives for 55 years. We're really born at the intersection of the black cooperative development really needs to occur is for to listen to the advocates like myself, Mr. Boyd, and others that have been expressing the ways in which the debt relief being held up is exacerbating an already existing wealth disparity. We've seen estimates of over $300 billion worth of wealth, and that's only if we count the land loss. That's not the exploitation of labor. That's not the exploitation of a way of life, of the meaningful relationships and connections between one generation passing on farming to the next. And I think that because of the wealth gap that this continued land loss is creating in our community, there definitely needs to be a holistic solution. We really can't look at it as an issue that the farmers need to deal with individually as groups. This is really an institutional problem that needs institutional solutions. And so organizations like the Federation have presented many, many solutions because our members, they're Black farmers themselves, our state coordinators, Mr. Ben Burkett, Mr. Cornelius Key, they're farmers, they work with the Federation. We've made suggestions over the decades, and the government really just needs to take our suggestions seriously because this is going to result in the next wave of Black land loss.
Absolutely. And if you're even a modest student of history, you know these things are very intentional. It is intentional to strangle the life out of us, however you do it, either physically or even through wealth. And that has to stop, Mr. Boyd. So if you can, Mr. Boyd, if someone from the administration, let's say President Biden, is watching this program right now, what is your message to this administration and the sense of urgency that Black farmers are dealing with? Please go ahead.
Absolutely. We're in a farm crisis, America. We're in a food shortage, America, and that includes Black farmers as well. We're facing all-time highs in the cost of diesel fuel, $6 a gallon for diesel fuel. Last year, I was paying $400 a ton for fertilizer. I'm now paying $1,100 and $1,200 a ton. The urgency of now is what the president should hear. Yes, his plate is full, but you can't ignore the oldest occupation in the history for Black people, which is farming. The National Black Farmers Association has been fighting for decades through court remedies and through act of Congress. I wore so many pair of shoes asking members of Congress to help us fix this. We can bail out the banks. We can bail out corporate America, the airlines, all of these people. But we can't help the oldest occupation in history, where we came to this country as slaves, sharecroppers, survived the horrific laws of Jim Crow. And we're still here. We're still here fighting. And for the people that are watching this, I want them to know today that I'm going to die a farmer. Whether the government does it, we're just about ready to give up on the government doing the right thing for Black farmers. And it's time for the general public to assist to save the Black farmer. They can help support the National Black Farmers Association. And for corporate America, we're receiving a deaf ear and a blind eye, from people like Walmart, who said 30% of the food is sold at their supermarkets, but they don't want to contract with Black farmers and invest in infrastructure for Black farmers. Companies like PepsiCo that talked us through for 2 years and then say, well, you know what, Boyd, we're going in a new direction. What direction? When all your farmers are white. We need contracts, we need infrastructure, and we need access to credit. And Mr. President, we need it now.
You indeed do, and you deserve it now. You've earned it now. I hope our viewers will look into the story of Elaine, Arkansas, with what happened there with farmers. And in 1933, the New Deal had an old problem, which was racism, which displaced tons of farmers in this country, Black farmers in this country. So this is rooted in history, Mr. Boyd. And just thank you for sharing your testimony. And I certainly hope someone from the administration is watching and will reach out to you. And Dania Davy, thank you for being here as well. And you'll both have to come back. I want to keep my eye on this story.